was some kind of optical illusion, a refraction of light off the low-lying clouds that blanketed most of the view below them, or maybe it was some kind of visual artifact of the aurora borealis that still flickered and played far to the north. But as she continued to focus on the unusual phenomenon stretching out far below, Fiona realized this was something else altogether. Something quite extraordinary. Trailing behind the rapidly advancing dawn was a scintillating ribbon of red that began as a barely distinguishable needle-thin line south of her position toward Indonesia and extended over the horizon toward Finland. As she followed the ribbon north, she could see it was gradually expanding in width. By the time it passed over the equator, it had grown to a thick band of crimson. Fiona estimated it was at least 30 miles wide at its broadest point, from leading edge to trailing edge. As it passed over the Tropic of Capricorn, she could see the crimson line begin to taper off again before it became nothing but a slight thread in the distance, and then disappeared completely a few miles short of the Arctic Ocean. She had immediately reported the strange event to Mission Control while relaying the station's incredible images back to the agency as the ISS swept over the phenomenon, continuing along its orbit. No one seemed to have any idea what it was she was seeing. The ribbon of red appeared to be moving in an almost regimented progression across the globe. Scientists on the ground and in the ISS postulated that it might be some kind of freak weather event, or maybe the smoke from an unobserved undersea volcanic eruption. But if either of those theories were correct, then surely there would have been some kind of disruption to the consistency of the ribbon, just as a contrail of a high-altitude aircraft will slowly lose its coherence. It stood to reason that whatever this event was, over time it should begin to dissolve, pulled away by winds and disruptive weather patterns. But there was no loss of cohesion. Its edges had remained sharply defined as it swept methodically onward across the globe. And whatever this stuff was made of, it was sufficiently dense that it was impossible to see through to the sea beyond. She watched as it completely obscured a small black dot that was probably a supertanker plying its way between countries. The tanker disappeared as the red streamer passed over it, before reappearing on the opposite side and continuing on its way to wherever it was bound. It seemed unharmed, and there was no sign that it had changed course or even seen the red band that it had passed directly beneath. It was difficult to say just how high above the surface this strange red anomaly was, but judging by the ship's unaltered course, the captain either hadn't considered it a threat or hadn't had time to make any evasive maneuvers. Not that it would have helped. The ribbon seemed to be spread almost completely across the globe. The observation port of the Cupola of Tranquility had the best view of the ongoing event, but it was too cramped to comfortably fit any more than 2 observers at once. Each member of the crew joined the commander in turn to watch the slowly advancing ribbon and offer up his or her opinions and theories. It was Ivan Krikalev, the team's resident flight surgeon, as well as a highly competent engineer, who finally voiced what everyone else had been thinking. "Perhaps it is some kind of alien life form," he whispered as he floated next to Fiona, watching through the observation port next to hers. "What?" she said, not sure she had heard him correctly. The implacable Russian slowly rotated to face her. "I said, perhaps it is alien in origin. The theory of panspermia is an accepted possibility of how life began on Earth. Maybe what we are observing is an example of that theory in action. Who knows for certain? I have no other suggestions." Fiona vaguely remembered watching a documentary on the Discovery Channel at some point that briefly covered the theory behind the unproven hypothesis. "Isn't that the idea that life on Earth originally came from outer space?" "You are basically correct," said Krikalev. "The theory is more complex than that, of course, but it has been around since the 5th century. It is all mainly conjecture, of course. Life is transferred from planet to planet by microorganisms trapped in meteors or blown on the solar winds.